Hey, everybody. I'm Steve Pressman, President and CTO of Alpine Cyber Solutions.
And I'm Frank Urbanski, the Vice President of Security Services here at Alpine Cyber Solutions.
Thank you for joining our podcast today. We're going to have a little chat about email security. It's interesting because email is something that's been around for so long. It's pretty much the first thing that any of us did on any kind of network, let alone on the internet. And for those who are a little on the older side, like myself, it was all the internet was for a while, and before we started getting into the World Wide Web. And because it's been around for so long, we sort of take it for granted, and can't do that. We really can't do that. Uh, the real issue is that today email security is really one of the, well, let me put it this way. Email is one of the biggest attack vectors that bad guys use to get their malware into an environment, to get ransomware into an environment, to get a foothold into an environment so they can go in, look around, take what they want and leave. And the reason email is so vulnerable is because it's ubiquitous. Everybody uses it. Everybody abuses it, really. And it's one of those things that we all know needs to be protected. But I think very few of us know exactly.
Yeah,
Um,
and with the way for like with anything that's been around for a while, you have old paradigms that are still in place, or something that you just forget about and don't give maintenance to that can lead it to be in a less secure state.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We take it for granted, right? The things that have been around for so long, we take them for granted. Oh, we know how to do email. We've done it forever. Yeah, unfortunately, it's because it's been around forever. Again, it's something that's taken advantage of. So today we're gonna give a little talk about, well, not talk. We're gonna have a little conversation about sort of those basic things that every company needs to have in place for their email solutions. And there's some real baseline stuff that we're going to talk about. And then we're going to talk about what's out there in the world as solutions to solve these problems for for these email issues that we're going to talk about. Um, we might bring up some products. Just to be very clear, we are not sponsored by or um, taking any money from any solution providers here. The names that we might list are just ones that are out there in the world, that are vendors that are out there in the world, and we'd hate to lead people without at least some idea of what the art of the possible is. And there are a lot of vendors in this space. And then yeah, we'll talk about what's next. What does the future hold for this old technology in email? So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. So let's talk about the bare basics. So Frank, if you're a new company and you're doing email, you're setting up an email domain. What do you think are those things that absolutely need to be done first before you release the beast and send people and let people start sending their emails across the internet?
Yeah, so yeah, if you're starting a new company, it's the easiest time to do this. Um, as you're setting up your domain for your website and you're getting your domain for your email address, you want to set up the technologies of SPF, DKIM, and then, like I said, and since you're just starting the company, DMARC would be easy to set up as well.
Yeah, so let's go over those real quick. So, by the way, I wrote a blog post earlier this week that's out on alpinecyber.com that really goes into not super lengthy, but goes into a little bit more detail about SPF, DKIM, and DMARC. These are, to be clear, free technologies. If anybody's trying to charge you to do SPF, DKIM, and DMARC, run. They're not good people. So SPF, to start with, I think it's Sender Policy Framework. What SPF is a basically it's a DNS entry that lives in your domain, so you own it, that lists the IP addresses and domain names where someone might receive email from your company. So we're alpinecyber.com. We have Microsoft 365. You might get email from Microsoft 365, and we're going to say, yep, that makes sense to us. But we also use other services. We use HubSpot for marketing, for instance. HubSpot can also send emails on our behalf. So that is in our SPF record as well. And when that, if you get an email from HubSpot, it's going to pass the SPF check because we said you might get stuff from us. But if you suddenly get something from gmail.com and somebody has just changed their send from address to something at alpinecyber.com, that's not us, and the SPF check will fail. DKIM, on the other hand, now DKIM is a little bit more complex because it deals with public key encryption. Anytime you're talking about encryption, it sends a certain class of system administrators running. Without going deep into it, what DKIM does is when you send a message, DKIM takes a chunk of that message and the subject and makes it and encrypts it and makes it a piece of data in the header of the email that the person who receives it never sees unless you go and look at your headers, which, let's be honest, nobody but security wonks does. And when the message is received on the other side, the mail server goes to our DNS again and gets the public key, decrypts the data and says, yup, that matches. Why? Well, because if it matches, that means nobody has changed that message from when it left to when it arrived. It's really a block for man in the middle to prevent somebody from coming in and changing stuff. The other thing it also does is if I'm a bad guy and I pretend to send a message, I don't have the private key on my mail server to encrypt that chunk. So when they try to decrypt it on the other side, it's going to fail decryption. So it's got a couple of benefits there. It's basically saying this message is the message that I sent you. And then finally, DMARC is another DNS entry that says, hey, receiving mail servers, if you get a message from my domain and the SPF or the DKIM fails, what do I do with it? DMARC says you need to either reject it or quarantine it or just let it through. Obviously, reject is the goal. So like Frank said, when you're first starting out a company, it's easy to set these things up. When you're in the middle of operating a company, people get nervous, like, oh my gosh, people are going to stop receiving my emails. The good thing is all of these technologies have a lot of tooling around them, and you can check before you enforce. You can set your DMARC into quarantine only or even to none just to make sure that things work, and then you can say, here we go. So, all right, this is not about DKIM, DMARC, and SPF. The main topic here that we want to talk about is what else? What else should you do? So, all right, Frank, why would anybody need more than SPF, DKIM, and DMARC? What's the point?
Yeah, so we just talked about how to protect people pretending to be you. That is just one of many different threats that are out there. So again, when you're using platforms like the popular ones like Google or Microsoft, they're going to be they're going to give you that base level of security that'll block some things, but going to an outside system can help you with a lot of other things. Inbound filtering, emails that are coming in from anywhere that could have malicious links, that could have malicious attachments, that could come from known malicious places. Microsoft and Google aren't necessarily security companies. They do a best effort. They're business companies, right? So you go to a security platform that can hopefully help you with some of that stuff. So in that realm, they'll filter. Those security practices will help you filter out some of those more malicious emails. But like with any security system, you need someone to look at it. So if you just pop a security system in between, it might be one telling you there's a problem that you're not aware of, or your users may not be receiving email. And if no one's looking at it, there'll be no one there to release them for them if they're putting in those requests. Thinking of sending email, think about your business now. You deal with a lot of sensitive information. And what is stopping you from sending any of that sensitive information outside of your environment? You can get a good email security system or set up good email security rules that could encrypt that stuff on the way out. Now, it doesn't necessarily stop that stuff from leaving. That's what DLP or data loss prevention or protection management can help you do. But if you're going to be sending that sensitive information, it's always good to at least encrypt it so that someone gets in between you and the recipient. They can't read it.
Yeah, man, you just went through a lot of stuff. I'm going to slow you down for a
Yeah,
second.
thank
So,
please.
yeah. Yeah. So what it comes down to is, SPF, DKIM, and DMARC we talked about. Those are truly just outbound protection. My email, when someone else receives it, is it from me? Like Frank said, that's great. But what about inbound email? How do I do spam filtering? How do I do malware filtering? So that idea of filtering, phishing protection, encryption, doing other stuff like that. Those are all very important things that you can and should do with email as well that aren't handled by SPF, DKIM, and DMARC. So what you really need, and Frank was really going deep into it, is an email security platform. Okay. An email security platform is something that, as Frank was mentioning, it can do scanning of your email to see if there's anything known malicious there. Maybe there's a link in it that goes to a website that is known to be bad. It's going to flag it or block it. Okay. Maybe it will say this person who's sending the email in, they look like they're impersonating someone in your company. So, if I got an email from frank.urbanski@gmail.com, my email security platform is going to flag that and say, oh, wow, that looks like someone's pretending to be Frank Urbanski at alpinecyber.com, and they're trying to trick you. So that sort of filtering of email with a process to review them to say, yeah, you know what, Frank sent it to me, and it had to come from his personal account because it was something personal, perhaps. And then I can say, okay, I trust it, right? So that's filtering. Encryption, Frank was talking about. Crazy important, right? If I'm sending email and I send it, and let's say it has, my personally identifiable information. Maybe I have to send a form to my bank, and my bank is not the most modern, perhaps, and they don't have a way for me to just upload it through a website that's secured with encryption. I can send it. Perhaps I put a little tag in my subject line that says encrypt or secure. And instead of sending that email over that email waves, right, over the internet like a traditional email, instead the user will, the recipient will receive a note saying, hey, someone's sending you encrypted mail. Come to our website to download it. And now what we're basically doing is we're getting out of the archaic form of email into the more modern and updated world of encrypted web traffic by going to an SSL website. Very useful stuff that you can get from these same systems. DLP, Frank, you talked about DLP real quick. Go for a second, explain what DLP is and how the email solution does and doesn't fit into there.
Yeah, so DLP, again, data loss prevention protection, depending on who you're talking to. It's the idea of when information is leaving your environment, no matter which way it is, how does your technology handle that? So we're just gonna talk about email right now. So again, you're sending sensitive information. It could be business secrets. It could be credit card information. It could be a number of things. DLP starts with a project and then ends with technology. So you want to classify all your data, figure out what data is important, and then as you send it out through email, your email system, whether it is your business system such as Microsoft or Google or another security product, will see that data, scan that data, understand its classification, and then make a determination on what to actually do with it. So say you never want your credit cards, you deal with a lot of credit card numbers, you never want that to leave your environment, you classify a credit card, maybe with a regular expression, and then as email goes out, your systems will look at that, say, hey, there's credit card information in it. I'm going to block that so it never leaves, and then I'm going to alert an administrator. That in a nutshell is DLP.
Yeah, and it's not just email. DLP can also do, hey, prevent you from posting it to a Facebook post or sending it through the web in some way. It can also say, all right, we're going to prevent you from sharing it with another company via Teams or SharePoint. It's a cool technology. Maybe we'll do another podcast about that at some point. But email is a primary vector. So, the idea of that, like Frank mentioned, doing that data classification, pretty important. And and it feeds into this email concept as well. But that's not the whole answer. Don't think you've got your DLP covered if you put an email solution in place. Couple more things, and we're talking about what the email security platforms can do. Um, Frank, let's talk about some of the newer features where email security platforms are actually able to connect interactively into your mail system and take action. Why would I want my mail security platform to be able to get into my Microsoft 365 and perhaps even rip out emails? Why would I want that?
Yeah, so as Steve alluded to, these systems these days, email systems these days being cloud hosted have a lot of APIs exposed, which means it allows other systems to interact with your email as opposed to the traditional just having a server that's in your environment and is closed off. So as Steve mentioned, you have an email security system. The email comes in, it gets through, it ends up in a couple of your users' inbox, and it's malicious, but it hasn't been detected yet. Someone clicks on that link. The link might be overwritten by that email security system, so it gets an extra scan, a live scan before they go to the website. During that scan, the email security system says, "Hey, this is actually a malicious email. However, since it's already been delivered to inboxes, which means other people might be clicking that link. Good news is, if you allow that connection to an API, that security system can now go in and remove those emails from the inbox, thus decreasing that risk exposure to your environment." Um, to go backtrack a little bit, when I said link scanning, something that is in like Microsoft 365 and a lot of security products is the ability to overwrite a link. So in the past, we used to say, hey, you receive an email, it says, click this link to go to google.com, and you'd hover over it. And if you hover over it, it might say maliciouswebsite.com. These days, a lot of systems will overwrite that link. So I think if you look at a Microsoft 365 overwritten link, it might say like on Microsoft or linktrust.com or something like that. The whole point is that it tracks a couple different things. It tracks one, who's clicking the link, so you can always in your investigation see who may have clicked the malicious link or clicked any link. But also it does allow for that second step that I mentioned, the on-demand link scanning, which then also has a couple different options via business and email systems, allowing the user to go right through, and then if it ends up being malicious, send the report to your security team, or tell the user to hold on for a minute while we scan this link to make sure it's safe.
Yeah, that's another one of those advanced features that's pretty cool. And then I'm going to bring in just this the last piece of what these security platforms today are doing. It's kind of like the new challenger entering the ring. Is we've talked as security professionals for years now about how you need to be phishing your users, and phishing is an email technology. I mean, yes, there's SMS phishing and voice phishing, smishing phishing, those things all exist, but phishing as part of the email solution is starting to really emerge. It used to be that we suggested that you go get an email secure or a phishing platform like KnowBe4, Wombat, or whatever might exist in that space. There's a lot of solutions in that space. Well, now a lot of those email security solutions are actually including a phishing platform as well. We're probably in that on, I guess, the hype cycle on that from a Gartner Forrester standpoint. We are we're I don't know that we're there where they're as good as the standalone systems, but it's coming. It's going to be that you're going to buy an email security solution, and it's going to include your phishing solution as well. We're going to talk a little bit about more in a second. So we've been talking around the topic for a bit. So what do you do? We've talked for a little bit now about why you should have an email security platform. So if you're out there looking for one, what are the big names? So Frank, what have you seen out there that people are using in this space?
Yeah, so you have some of the heavyweight names such as Proofpoints, the Mimecasts. They're probably two of the biggest enterprise class ones you see out there. And I know they do have smaller offerings to help with smaller businesses at a better price point. You have some of the MSP focused ones like Barracuda and I think Avanan and Checkpoint. We ourselves like to use Trustify. But there's not a lack of options out there. And if you're definitely looking for someone, yeah, give a couple calls, get a couple demos, see what would fit your need.
Yeah, and what it comes down to is they all do it similarly, but their features need comparing, right? If, for instance, if link scanning is something that's very important, you might want to double check to make sure that that's included in the product that you go with. And in fact, a lot of those things that Frank mentioned, Proofpoint, they have multiple product lines. You want to make sure you're getting the right thing. It's not always get me the biggest padlock. I'm going to lock this thing up. Get the features that are going to be the most useful for your business case. So, all right, the elephant in the room. I signed up for Microsoft 365. I bought a business premium license, and that comes with email security. So I'm going to let you talk, Frank. Why wouldn't I just use that?
Yeah, so in the beginning, perfectly fine. They come with some default rules that does give you some base level of security. However, if you were to assess those base level rules against any standard, including the CIS standards, they're not good enough. My take on that is that, again, back to that, Microsoft or Google or any of them, they're a business focused company. So if you sign up for Microsoft and you have your email through Microsoft, they want to make sure that you get your business emails. Security be darned. We'll go with. So they don't want to get a bunch of calls saying you're blocking my business. As with anything in security, there's always this constant fight between usability and security. And sadly, the way the world is going, we have to slowly remember to start pulling things towards the security realm. So, like I said, we like to use Trustify, but all of these platforms kind of operate in the same way. If you were to put that security platform in front of Microsoft, you have the ability to just see what Microsoft would let through and then what the security system would flag it as without actually blocking it. That way you get yourself a period of making sure, hey, okay, my business emails are getting through, or some of them might be getting blocked. So I'm going to make sure I create the rules and allow lists and such over the next 1, 2, 3 weeks until I'm in a happy spot. So that way you end up with a nice, succinct and agreed upon usability and security level.
Yeah, that's a huge point. Yeah, and it's interesting because I get customers asking me all the time, why do we talk about other platforms? And it really comes down to the age-old security adage of defense in depth. Like Frank said, you're just because you let me put it this way. If you don't have the money and you just put Microsoft in the way, it's not going to hurt you actively, but it's not going to help you actively either. You really should put another system in front. Whether you go and buy Proofpoint or Mimecast or Barracuda or Trustify or any of the ones that Avanan, Vade. There's so many platforms out there and a lot of small companies as well that are worth looking at. You do need to add something to fill the gap that Microsoft or Google Workspaces is leaving. And yeah, don't just sit back and take it and say, well, I'm paying this Microsoft price, so therefore it's good. It's not good enough.
Yeah,
That's a fact.
and just to reiterate on that a little bit, iterate a little more on that. I'm not out here saying that Microsoft is awful. My experience has been it's a pain in the butt to set up and get it into a way that makes sense. I've had enough experience with it to feel that it is not good enough. I think if anyone here uses Microsoft 365 as their platform and you haven't done a ton of customization to it, I would be surprised to hear any of you say it doesn't let anything through.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, and it also tends to be that you need to dedicate resources, humans, to it as well. Whereas if you engage with a managed service provider, perhaps they can do the management, the configuration, the tweaking, the maintenance, the review and release of malicious emails or questionable emails for your company as well. So especially for the small and medium-sized business, get an MSSP who knows what they're doing and brings in a platform that you can use. That's my recommendation. Granted, as somebody who runs an MSSP, I guess I'm a little bit, I might be a little bit, it might be a little conflict of interest, but it's just the fact. All right, let's talk about what's next. So looking forward, again, email has been around. I'm going to be honest, I hate email. In my company, we use Teams or Slack or whatever real-time platform we can use whenever possible, but email is not going anywhere. It's truly not going anywhere. It is going to still be there, and we need to continue to protect it and continue to evolve our protections because the bad guys are continuing to try to find ways around them. So, Frank, what does email security look like 5 years from now? Put on
Great.
your get your crystal ball out. Let's see. Let's see what you got.
Yeah, good. Let's make sure we delete this podcast in 5 years. So API connectivity. I mentioned it a little bit earlier. It seems like the world is going that way for many things, but especially for email. So like I said, so especially the emails in the cloud, APIs are exposed. Today, some of these security tools are already doing things where you can hook in and rip email out, or even automatically configure itself. Microsoft's almost entire cloud platform has APIs exposed that allow you to automate everything. So we should only start to see more and more automation through these security tools. We'll just leave that at that. The next one, I'm going to say probably the biggest buzzword of 2024 is artificial intelligence.
Artificial intelligence. Sorry, it's like a drinking game. Take a shot.
Yeah, artificial intelligence is making its way into everything. You might see it called artificial intelligence or machine learning or any of the other buzzwords. They all kind of mean the same thing. Using some algorithms in the back end to help detect badness. So you have the old way of doing things, which is just looking at regular expression rules. If I put these 5 words together, it's bad. Now artificial intelligence can say, okay, well, this thing might seem fishy. These words might be in an interesting arrangement, and it's coming from somewhere that you've never seen before. You know what? That might be a business email compromise. We're going to hold that one back.
I love that you said fishy, by the way, because I can picture it spelled either way.
Yeah.
Phishy. It's fishy.
Looks fishy and smells fishy.
That's right.
Yeah, so right now, artificial intelligence, and not to make this an artificial intelligence thing, it's not good enough to be an actor, but it's good enough to start making some determinations. I can see maybe in 5 years, artificial intelligence starts to become smarter, where it gets a little self-learning and can almost act as a low-level, I don't want to say employee, I don't want to say analyst, but a low-level worker, right? So maybe it will be smart enough to say, okay, this email I just saw, we're pretty confident it's bad. We're going to block it, but it looks like some emails that I saw earlier this morning from a similar domain that doesn't, that doesn't work with you. I'm going to go and rip them out for you, and then just send you a note that I did it. That way, a human's still in a loop, but it starts taking more actions.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah, AI as a helper. Today, it's sort of AI as a cricket in your ear. It'll become more AI as a helper, and then eventually become AI as an actor. Which, yeah, we got to get there. And now that we've made all of our viewers, drunk from all the shots they had to take, we're going to stop talking about that. And another thing I think is going to be coming is I mentioned it before, phishing. Having active phishing campaigns built into the platform, I think is just a matter of time. And a lot of services are doing it today. Microsoft has their own internal service if you buy the right level of license. A lot of I think Proofpoint bought Wombat or something like that. There's a lot of acquisition happening in that marketplace. And I think that it's really like the phishing world is going to become commodity within the email filtering. And those other companies that don't get bought up, acquired, or brought in are going to start becoming more learning management, because phishing and learning are really part of the same coin. So to me, that's what I see coming in the future, is that everyone's going to be phishing each other all the time to keep our humans sharp.
Yeah, to that point, I was at a conference earlier this year that did mention this, and Steve kind of alluded to it a little bit, that the waves, we're coming out of a wave where everyone wanted the best in breed at everything, best in breed email security, antivirus, et cetera, et cetera. And now we're starting this up climb towards trying to get things into a singular platform because we have too many things. It seems like IT goes on that cycle every 5 to 7 years where we want to have the best in breed of all the different products out there. Oh no, give me a single platform with as many features and one thing that I can look at, and then we go back. So it seems like we're heading towards singular platform right now.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing I think is going to be more happening is additional scanning. So right now, when an email comes in, scanning inbound email is becoming the norm. Everybody kind of understands when emails come in, they might get scanned, but also outbound. If a message goes out, you can do that today, but it's kind of, from what we've seen in the wild, not a lot of people are doing it. So very quickly, why would we do that, right? You want to make sure that messages that are leaving don't contain your proprietary information. Frank talked about adding DLP rules. We want to make sure that if the business email compromise has happened and someone else is using that account, that they're not now spamming, all of your contacts. That can be detected if you have outbound scanning enabled. And I think that's going to be more and more common and more default in the future as well. You think, Frank?
Oh yeah, and you mentioned it. I think almost every product now asks you, "Hey, you can enable this if you want, but the toggle is off by default."
Right.
In the same vein, though, for internal to internal is the same. So a lot of the times, you're internal. So if I'm sending Steve an email or he's sending me an email, which we don't do, it just bypasses all your filters. But for the same reason, why wouldn't you want it scanned? I mean, if you're sending email out or you're receiving email in, internal to internal, that should be the norm going forward.
Yeah, the assumed breach, like somebody
Yeah.
might be on the inside. Why not check for it? So yeah, 5 years from now, I guess we're not that imaginative. It's a lot of features that exist today, but there'll be more on by default. And I think that's where we're going. So let's close this up. I don't want to keep people for too long. So if you stayed with this long, thank you, and I hope you've learned some things. The things that I think that would be best for you to come away with are a couple. First of all, if you don't have SPF, DKIM, and DMARC configured in your environment, go do it now. Go do it now. And then, by the way, put a reminder on your calendar to go look at your settings again in 6 months, because between now and then, maybe someone in your company signs up for a new ERP system or a new marketing system or something, and they didn't add it to the SPF record, or something else may have gone wrong. So definitely get your DKIM, DMARC, and SPF configured. The other thing I want you to remember, and again, it's kind of a simple thing, but you have to remember that email is a business necessity, but you have to treat it as something that's dangerous. So as a result, you have to take action. You can't just say, I've got Microsoft, I've got Google, I'm good. No, you really have to take positive action. So to that end, there are a lot of paid solutions out there, like we mentioned. There are free ones as well. And just like with anything else, if you wanted to look and implement your own filtering solutions, just remember there's going to be labor involved and you're going to have to keep up with it yourself. And that's fine if that's the way your business runs. But you can do a lot of stuff with Clam AV and Squid and
Spam
Frank, what's the
assassin.
Spam Assassin?
Yeah.
You can do stuff by hand, but I think you're going to find in most cases that the juice isn't worth the squeeze compared to a couple of bucks per user per month for a paid solution. And either way, do it. It's a baseline capability. Your company needs its email protected. So with that said, we're going to sign off. Frank, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. And I hope people learned something.
No problem. Thanks, Steve.
All right. Have a good one.
Bye.